It's just too crazy. Donald Trump has confirmed that he wants to create a Fort Knox for Bitcoin because he's worried that China is accumulating Bitcoin too aggressively. This also means that Donald Trump is very likely looking to build up several 100,000 Bitcoin, if not millions, in the reserve. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to create a Fort Knox for Bitcoin. This is a huge piece of news that we need to take a close look at, coming from an insider leak. Also, there's a massive twist, because now it is becoming clear who is running the US government. And something really, really exciting is happening here, because the EU, China, Canada, and Mexico could ensure that Bitcoin holdings in the US continue to rise. And then there's breaking news. Donald Trump will be signing executive orders today. And a whole lot of people are speculating right now that Donald Trump will sign the executive order for Bitcoin. We need to take a look at that too. And Donald Trump's son, Barron Trump, is making a statement regarding the strategic Bitcoin and crypto reserve, which is also very, very interesting. But first, let's take a look at the executive order before we get into the Fort Knox and everything else. In fact, there's now a report that Donald Trump will sign an executive order at 2 p.m. US time, or maybe even several. And if this is about Bitcoin, it would be huge. So, if this is about Bitcoin, that would be really, really, really good. I'll be honest with you, I don't think this is really about Bitcoin, because he also gave a speech and said that he will sign a few executive orders. And in the speech, he actually already hinted that he would be signing more executive orders. I don't really remember what exactly it was, but he announced something in his last speech a day ago. And yeah, the executive order will probably make more sense after he makes the announcement, maybe at the crypto summit that's happening tomorrow. So, I can't imagine he's going to do that today. We only have 24 hours left until the big crypto summit, where a lot of people are eagerly waiting to see if Donald Trump will announce the strategic Bitcoin reserve. But what's really, really crazy is that we now actually have the news that former Morgan Stanley banker Michael Crimes is expected to lead the new U.S. sovereign fund, and that would be initiated by executive order, creating a U.S. sovereign fund. And there are now two ways to stack Bitcoin here in the U.S. Once through a direct stockpile, so a strategic reserve, and once through the sovereign fund. There are already a ton of different speculations about whether the Bitcoin that's currently seized will go into the stockpile or if they'll end up in the sovereign fund. But definitely, and this is the big deal, it's being said that the U.S. sovereign funds are supposed to be financed through foreign tariffs, according to sources. These funds aim to create economic benefits for the citizens of the country, and they are often financed by revenues from commodity exports or foreign exchange reserves of the central bank. My guess is that crypto will be included. And now, pay attention, that means Europe, or the EU, China, Canada, the U.S., Mexico, and so on. Anyone who has been hit with tariffs here could actually help increase the Bitcoin holdings in the U.S. That means even the folks in the EU ivory tower, Ursula von der Leyen, and so on, could really help boost the Bitcoin holdings. Going up further in the U.S., I really find it a very, very interesting move to say, okay, hey, we're raising the tariffs. There is a bit of inflationary pressure here, meaning that tariffs are generally inflationary because they drive prices up. That's kind of like a hidden tax. Or actually a tax, but it's not within the country, it's kind of outside the country. So, it's like you're creating something inflationary here, but maybe you can counteract that by buying Bitcoin and hard assets. And that's how you can strengthen the dollar, how you might create new trust in the dollar, and how you could generate more interest in the dollar. That means the dollar or US government bonds will be bought more internationally. So that means it leads to lower interest rates and so on. So, it's like you're balancing inflationary tools with deflationary tools. I mean, whether that will actually happen later on remains to be seen. But if this is really in the works, then I think it's a very, very smart strategy to generate additional revenue. A lot of people still say that it would be somewhat easier to put Bitcoin into the sovereign fund rather than a stockpile, because the stockpile can happen through an executive order. That's what people are speculating about now, that an executive order will come today. I don't think it's going to happen today. If it happens, then that's super awesome. But that's the problem, that through the stockpile. That sometimes, if you do it the way Cynthia Lummis talks about in Congress, the Senate, and so on, it can sometimes take a really, really long time. Some people think it could take until next year. A strategic Bitcoin reserve could make it happen faster, but the problem is that when Donald Trump is no longer in office, the whole thing can be averted and abolished again. But if you do it through a sovereign fund, then, as I understand it, it should be relatively easy to transfer Bitcoin in there. Buying Bitcoin with the sovereign fund. There are also considerations about, for example, reevaluating gold. We're getting to that now, about Fort Knox. Because in Fort Knox, they want to do the audit, check the gold reserves, to see if they're really there. And gold is currently valued at around $40 or something like that per ounce. In the meantime, we're way, way higher up in gold. And, who knows, once that's evaluated and audited, maybe we'll be at $5,000 or so per ounce by then. I don't know. And then you have unrealized gains here. And now there's the assumption that this new stock, this new money, will be used to collateralize against it. So, you use the gold ounces, you use all the assets you have here, which then get transferred into the sovereign fund. So the gold gets transferred into the sovereign fund, and then you have reserves here, like, for example, massive gold reserves. You can use those as collateral, and from that, you could buy Bitcoin again. And on top of that, you use the tariffs to buy Bitcoin and stuff like that. So, these are so different ways how you can generate money or cash flow or something like that and then put it into Bitcoin, even though it's not really cash flow, but at least it's additional income, kind of like cash flow or something. Then there's this guy, what's his name, Michael Crimes, who used to be at Morgan Stanley, and he's going to be leading the whole thing. I can't say much about the person. Some Bitcoiners have spoken out, like Caitlin Long, who said she doesn't think it's a good idea for states to buy Bitcoin, that there's now a strategic reserve, that there's a stockpile, and so on. But if you do that, then here would be the Morgan Stanley guy who used to be at Morgan Stanley. He would be a suitable person. So Caitlin Long is also pretty well known in the Bitcoin space, has a pretty good reputation, and I found it an interesting take that she says, okay, she actually thinks it's a bad idea, but if someone's going to do it, then it should be him. Because that is still the debate that many people say. For example, hey, okay, I think strategic Bitcoin reserves are good, because then the backs go up, but others say, no, I don't think that's a bad thing either, because somehow, Bitcoin didn't start with a somehow. It's not about cheering for some politicians or anything like that. It actually started with the idea of separating state and money. And a lot of people still find it very, very important that this crucial message is getting a bit lost these days. David Bailey, the advisor to Donald Trump, says that too. We're going to buy Bitcoin, and we're going to make Mexico and Canada pay for it. And of course also, Europe, Germany, and anyone who gets hit with any tariffs here. So, that's just crazy. If we imagine it like this, David Bailey says that Mexico and Canada will end up paying for the Bitcoin. And now we really have to get into the whole Fort Knox story, because Donald Trump actually made an astonishing statement here that could really change everything. Here it says, according to Zach Herbert, CEO of Foundation, they make hardware, wallets, and things like that. U.S. President Donald Trump is said to have asked after his election victory whether Bitcoin is damaging the U.S. dollar. So, that was an insider conversation here. And an advisor is said to have told him that it might be the case, but it would be better if the U.S. held more Bitcoin than China. And then Donald Trump said, we want to move forward with that. And you can really see that Donald Trump seems to have grasped that very, very quickly. That means you could make it appealing to Donald Trump with Bitcoin, not by convincing Donald Trump here. Rather than saying, yes, Bitcoin has such good qualities, it seems that they have convinced it by simply saying, hey, there are competitors, and they could potentially accumulate more Bitcoin than we do. And Donald Trump has an ego. And maybe that would trigger his ego here. And that's why he clearly said, hey, no, we need the fort for Bitcoin. We need to build up massive Bitcoin reserves. And I'm telling you this now, and I already mentioned it to you at the beginning of the video. If this is really true, and he actually means it seriously, and is really thinking about the Fort Knox concept, then we can assume that he's not just buying like 10,000 Bitcoin or something like that, but that he has a high six-figure number, 400, 500, 800, 900,000 or something like that. Or maybe even accumulate a seven-figure amount of Bitcoin. Because it doesn't make any sense to build a Fort Knox for Bitcoin if you're just going to buy like 10,000 Bitcoin or something. So, I just checked again. Fort Knox is supposed to hold 4,500 tons of gold. And then you just see what a powerful statement that is. An equivalent in Bitcoin. I don't know if you can convert that. I also took a look. Fort Knox isn't actually the largest gold vault in the world. It would have to be a relatively high amount. Whether it's really 1 million or something like that, I have no idea. You also have to say, nobody knows what's actually in Fort Knox. It could also be that Donald Trump meant buying fake Bitcoin or something like that, issuing paper Bitcoin or something, that he was referring to that. But I don't think he thought that far ahead. You have to say, this statement comes from an insider. It can always be the case that with these insider leaks, either the insider is lying or it's being misrepresented, and so on. We haven't really heard Donald Trump's statement officially in a speech or anything like that. It's an insider leak. What's also interesting is that he's kind of thought about whether Bitcoin is harming the dollar. And that's always what Michael Saylor says. Michael Saylor says no, Bitcoin and the dollar are not opponents. Rather, Bitcoin can help save the dollar's ass. And I think that's pretty clear. Arrived at Donald Trump that he's not afraid anymore. Before Bitcoin, because many states are struggling. Yeah, so also against Bitcoin, because they're afraid of Bitcoin. That means they're still in a position where they realize, hey, we're afraid of Bitcoin, we need to fight it. Donald Trump is unafraid of Bitcoin. This strengthens the dollar. No more fear of Bitcoin. See this as an opportunity to strengthen the dollar. I see this as an opportunity for us as the USA to position ourselves very, very well. And I also see it as an opportunity to possibly get the upper hand in the trade war against China. I mean, Donald Trump, you can always tell from his statements that he definitely doesn't understand Bitcoin in detail. He doesn't understand Bitcoin on a deeper level, but he understands the basic dynamics that maybe the first one to buy a lot of Bitcoin will benefit immensely. He understands the basic dynamics that if we don't do it, then China will. And he understands the basic dynamics that you need a reserve. And for that, you might need a Fort Knox. I mean, there was a report that came out this morning. In the video, I mentioned that Donald Trump has filled his pockets again, that he bought more Bitcoin, or rather, Libertify. bought Bitcoin and filled their pockets with 10 million before the big crypto summit starts here tomorrow, and you really have to pay close attention to what's coming next. I mean, based on the actions, you'd have to conclude, okay, some announcement or something is coming. But we know Donald Trump is unpredictable. A lot of people actually assume that it's a rare news event. But what makes me a bit optimistic is that we've had a lot of announcements from Trump where the whole Bitcoin space was really, really positive. And whenever the Bitcoin space has been really, really positive, it was either a nothing burger or often a rare news event. And this time I feel like we have more of a somewhat more cautious mood. People aren't super bullish right now. They're saying, okay, hey, this is probably going to be a rare news event. Because the last few times, Donald Trump didn't really deliver. And then there were disappointments. Then he at least said that there's something going on with Bitcoin, but it turned out to be less relevant than people thought. So the announcement was basically smaller than expected. And right now, the mood isn't exactly super bullish. That means it usually happens the opposite of what you think. And then we have another interesting statement here. This is the statement from the son of Donald Trump and Barron Trump. And a lot of people have been asking or speculating, hey, Barron Trump must be the insider here. Because there was that person who placed a 50x long bet on the news from Donald Trump. And then here, the market, I'd say, has been extremely manipulated. And Barron Trump has made it very clear that he is not the insider here, at least according to this tweet. He says here, I want to make it clear that I do not have any official cryptocurrency, no token, and no coin. Any crypto project that uses my name or my image is unauthorized. Be careful and avoid scams. So, he's kind of making an indirect statement that he has nothing to do with all this stuff. That too, probably some people have created some meme consult or something like that with his name. I also assumed that something similar happened with Donald Trump, where people just used his name to create a Donald Trump coin and stuff like that. He's definitely making a statement that he's distancing himself from all this stuff. And with that, you could maybe take away that he at least officially says he's not the insider. I mean, I never believed he was the insider trading all this stuff. I can't imagine Donald Trump having his son on the side like that. So, I really think that theory is a stretch. But hey, folks, drop your thoughts in the comments below about the current developments. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll give you a link below. 21 Bitcoin, where you can easily and safely buy Bitcoin. Here's the code BitcoinHotel. Up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. See you later. Peace out.